Rosario Gambino hailed from Loretta, Sicily, and sometime in the mid-1960s, his family immigrated to the United States and initially settled in Brooklyn, in and around the Bensonhurst area, a stronghold of the Gambino family, which was ruled by their cousin, Carlo Gambino. Sometime during 1968-1969, the Gambino brothers, Rosario and Joe, relocated to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Their older brother, John, remained living in Brooklyn, where he operated out of Cafe Giardino. An Italian law enforcement report dated in the early 1960s identified Rosario as being a member of the Passo di Rigano family, headed by Salvatore Inzerillo, his relative. Joe and John became members of the Gambino family in and around 1976. Allegedly, John was also a member of Sicilian Cosa Nostra, but was inducted into the American Mafia. John eventually became a captain of the Gambino Sicilian faction and was his family's anchor. Joe handled business fronts as well as the cash, and Rosario was the liaison who gave the Palermo bosses a presence in New York and one inside the Gambino family, primarily to set up a heroin pipeline. The Sicilians needed trusted distribution, and the New York side needed reliable suppliers. The Gambino brothers had both angles covered by strategically positioning themselves. By the 1970s, and by design, the Gambino brothers transformed themselves into a transatlantic power structure by using their dual roots in Sicilian and American Cosa Nostra. The Gambino family in New York, specifically its boss, Paul Castellano, who succeeded his cousin and brother-in-law Carlo Gambino, was a stickler for the no drug dealing rule for family members, yet gave his relatives exemption to operate outside of those traditional rules. But of more significance, he demonstrated his favoritism by attending a meeting with Philadelphia boss Angelo Bruno at the Gambino's Brothers restaurant, Valentino's, in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. During that meeting, Bruno agreed that the Gambino brothers, especially Rosario, could operate in Philadelphia as long as they gave him tribute. Rosario also had a close working relationship to Phil Testa and his son Salvi. In the late 1970s, Rosario and John had a hand in helping Michele Sedona stage a fake abduction. This took place in part so Sedona could evade criminal charges. At the time, he was free on bail in connection with the collapse of the Franklin National Bank and charged with major fraud-related counts, including perjury and the misappropriation of bank funds. Sedona was an Italian banker with deep connections to the Vatican and Sicilian and American Cosa Nostra. On August 2, 1979, Sedona left the Hotel Pierre in Manhattan and met with Rosario Gambino on the corner of 42nd and 2nd Avenue. They drove to a motel in Staten Island, and then Rosario drove the disguised Sedona to Kennedy Airport, where he boarded a flight to Vienna under an alias. Not long after, Rosario and John Gambino met with Sedona in Sicily. The following year, Sedona stood trial in the U.S., and Rosario was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. During this time frame, and up until the 1980s, the Gambino brothers put their plan in motion, which was moving large amounts of heroin, supplied by Palermo bosses Salvatore Inzerillo, Stefano Bontante, and Gaetano Badalamenti. The Gambino brothers used pizzerias as fronts, which was why U.S. authorities dubbed the investigation and ultimate case the Pizza Connection. For a while, by operating in New Jersey and Philadelphia, the Gambino brothers managed to fly under the constant FBI surveillance taking place in New York. The brothers wound up in the center of an investigation headed by prosecuting magistrate Giovanni Falcone in Sicily, who accused the brothers of importing heroin from Turkey and the Middle East to Sicily and then into the United States via pizzerias. Falcone tracked the profits from drug sales back to Sicily, where they landed in some banks linked to Michele Sedona. The Gambino brothers were acting as financial intermediaries by moving money through business accounts and shell companies. By the early 1980s, Falcone gathered enough evidence to issue an arrest warrant for Rosario Gambino for narcotics trafficking and mafia association. Falcone shared all his information and evidence with the U.S. prosecutors, who were piecing together the Pizza Connection indictment that included Rosario. On March 16, 1984, FBI agents from the Newark, New Jersey division, working alongside the Drug Enforcement Administration and New Jersey police detectives, executed a search warrant at 5 Logan Drive in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, the home of Rosario. As a result of the search, they turned up several $1,000s in U.S. currency, including 2 marked $100 bills that were used in a previous undercover heroin purchase, which took place on February 20th, 1984. They also discovered records and phone books containing heroin trafficking contacts from New York, New Jersey, and Sicily. Some of the records documented money transfers and phone calls linking Rosario and the Cherry Hill Gambino crew to Philadelphia-based couriers and businesses. A small quantity of heroin residue was also discovered, as well as drug packing material, a registered handgun, jewelry, and bank slips from Sicilian banks. But the most crucial discovery was 36 confidential NYPD Intelligence Division reports, which included diagrams of family charts, surveillance reports, criminal records of organized crime members, and names of informants. These documents would later be traced to NYPD Detective Louis Eppolito. Prior to his trial for the pizza connection, Rosario's lawyers attempted to claim that he was mentally incompetent and suffered from anxiety, depression, and memory loss. However, a judge found him to be competent to stand trial. Rosario was convicted in the U.S. District Court for the District of New Jersey on December 11, 1984, for conspiracy to traffic heroin, possession of heroin with intent to distribute, and using a telephone to facilitate a conspiracy to distribute heroin. Fast forward to the 90s. One afternoon, Robert Clinton, brother of the then sitting president Bill Clinton, was enjoying a foursome at the Rancho Park Golf Course in Los Angeles. He was approached by none other than Rosario Gambino's son, Tommy. They had known each other for years, and during that day they spoke for a while. Before parting ways, Tommy gave Roger Clinton a gold Rolex. Roger also received a $50,000 check made out to his music business. Subsequently, Roger began lobbying to get Rosario Gambino clemency, but to no avail. In fact, in January 1999, Rosario was denied parole. He was released from federal prison in 2007 and transferred to an immigration detention center in San Pedro, California. Meanwhile, Italy had made several requests for his deportation. 2 years later, on May 23, 2009, Rosario arrived at Rome's Leonardo da Vinci Airport on a flight that left from Miami. He was taken into custody by Italian authorities. At the time, he looked frail and was in a wheelchair and sported some type of arm brace. He was served with the original 1980 arrest warrant signed by Giovanni Falcone, which had yellowed with age. Falcone had been killed by the Mafia in May of 1992. Rosario was only questioned, but did not remain in custody. On October 25, 2011, he was arrested at a clinic in Rome for a pretrial detention order by the Palermo Court of Appeals because apparently he was sentenced to 20 years for conspiracy to commit drug trafficking. And I believe that this sentence was given in absentia when he was still serving a sentence in the United States, but it was under appeal, and the sentence was later reduced to 16 years. The United States was also trying to extradite him back because they stated that he violated his release terms, which was an immigration issue, and doesn't make sense since they were the ones who turned him over in 2009. But Italy reviewed and denied the request due to his age and health issues, but more so because he already served his time in the United States. On February 3, 2014, the Palermo Court of Appeals acquitted him of the drug charges and his 16-year sentence. On July 17, 2019, Rosario was among 19 people arrested in a joint operation between Italian and American law enforcement who targeted a renewed alliance between Sicilian Cosa Nostra and the New York Gambino family in rebuilding their ties for drug trafficking, money laundering, and other mafia-related crimes. Rosario was considered a central figure and crucial link between both organizations. There are no records, as far as I could see, as to the outcome of that case. If you haven't liked this video yet, please take the time now and give it a like, as it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Anyone who'd like to show their appreciation for videos like this, or more importantly, help me to continue making them, you can donate with the Super Thanks icon down below, or through the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. Let me quickly mention my blog, also called Sit Down News, especially for those of you who still enjoy reading. The site can be found at sitdownnews.com and is a paid subscription. During an interview, Rosario Gambino had the following to say: "I've paid my dues with justice. I've already paid my debt to American justice. I believe I was wrongly convicted. In the U.S., it was hell. I served 25 years plus 3 in Italy." As of today, Rosario Gambino lives in Sicily and is 83 years old and will be 84 in January.